Good afternoon. On Behind the Gavel with Jason, this week we'll be talking about the KCPT Antique and Fine Art Appraisal Fair that we did last weekend for Kansas City's public television station. Just we are rebroadcasting today because we had a technical issue with the earlier broadcast, so we had no volume, no sound, so nobody could hear what I was talking about. So we're going to rebroadcast this right now and kind of talk about what we talked about before. So thank you all for watching. And last week on Saturday, a week ago, tomorrow, we did the appraisal event for KCPT, Kansas City Public Television Station. This is the fifth time that they've done this event. I've been involved with all 5 times. My company has been involved as a sponsor 4 of the 5 times. And this year, it's not an annual event. It happens somewhat regularly. Obviously, when the National Road Show came into town a couple of years ago, it made no sense to compete with that. And so they kind of gave the local road appraisal event a bit of a break. And so this year, the station contacted us and said, hey, we'd like to bring this back to the calendar, see if it's something that people would be interested in doing again. And sure enough, they were. There were several hundred people pledged their support of the station. And by doing that, they received tickets to the event where they could each bring in up to a guest or 2 and up to 6 items, basically. So we looked at my fellow appraisers and I looked at literally thousands of items because several people brought in more than their allotted share, and so we really did look at a lot of interesting, neat things. And my day started pretty epic. The second item I saw was one of the best Southern pottery face jugs I've ever seen, and it was a good early 20th century, possibly late 19th century face jug that you see them made today. You've seen them made over the last 100 years, but this was a really good early example and really neat to see when a person of that quality that had honestly been in a closet for 25 years, the gentleman said they were just kind of looking for things to bring in, and that was something that they found. My day ended on a pretty epic note as well. The last thing I saw was a spectacular Oriole rug, one of the most plush and finely woven pieces I've ever dealt with and seen. But the couple before that, the people before that, was a mother and son, and they brought in a couple of interesting things. And they had on a cart a little piece of furniture, and I could just see the legs, and they had it covered with a blanket. And when we got done looking at the things at the table, I said, so what's that piece of furniture on there? It's got a really sexy looking leg. It's got a really neat turned leg to it. And when they unwrapped it, under the blanket, I thought it was a sugar chest, which is a really rare form. I always like to see those. People like them. But it was actually a miniature chest of drawers, 2/3 or 2/2. Most of these are made in the early to mid 20th century. This one, they actually had the family provenance and lineage down to 1825. One of their ancestors was a cabinet maker and had made this for someone in the family. And so they had this great historical lineage. And one of the interesting things about that piece, we see a lot of different ranges of objects during the day. Some things worth $20, some things worth $20,000. And this was worth several $1,000s, but it was more important to the family as an object than it was financially or monetarily. It'll never leave the family. So I suggested to them that they actually have a professional appraisal done, bring somebody to them to document it, photograph it, and make sure that the information is preserved for it. And then I also suggested that they could do something along the lines of taking very detailed measurements of it. And that way, if anything ever were to happen to it, it could be recreated. And I think the fire in Notre Dame this week clearly illustrates how important that is to take those steps before something happens rather than afterwards. Thanks for watching, Dan and Johan. We're talking about an appraisal event we did last week for KCPT in Kansas City here. If you have any questions or anybody else knows who's watching, please go ahead and post them here. We'll be happy to answer them during today's episode. Excuse me. And so we saw some really great things. Another lady brought in a silver plate basket that was really not much of anything, in great shape. They're worth $75 to $100. And this one looked like the boys had played baseball with it and used it as the baseball. It was beat up, it was bent, it was misshapen, it was missing the handle. And one of my good friends, Rob Lee, was one of the appraisers. He told me, honestly, it's worth about nothing. There's really no monetary value to it. And the lady said, what about if it was restored? And he said, well, you could get it restored. It probably costs upwards of $1,000 because it has to be completely reformed. The handle's got to be refabricated out of nothing. and then it's going to be silver plated. I mean, it's going to be a very pricey thing. And she said, well, I want to have that done because it's such an important piece to our family. It meant that much to her that she would spend 100 or 10 times more than it was ever going to be worth to have it restored to keep that family story alive. And so that was something good for us to hear as appraisers, that not everything that comes our way is strictly about the financial value. Oftentimes the sentimental and emotional value is worth much more than the object ever could be. And it was a good refresher, a good reminder of that. The event was a great event, but a lot of work gets put into those behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. I want to thank the volunteers from KCPT, staff and volunteers from the station, numbered about 12 different people. There were staff there, obviously the event coordinator and things like that, programming director. There were also, I will say 10 or so volunteers who were there checking people in, directing people to where they needed to go as far as which expert to see, which appraisal table to go to. And their assistance in the day really made it successful and it run very smoothly. I want to thank the El Torreon Ballroom in Midtown Kansas City here, historic structure here in Kansas City, and they donated the space for the event, and I know the station is very thankful for that, and we are as well. We need a place to do these events, and it's always great when they can work something out with the station. And it was a great space for it, centrally located, and then just a nice little ballroom space. I also want to thank the appraisers. There was about 12 of us there that day, and I'm going to read each person's name and what their specialties and their company name here is. And if you ever have needs in any of these topics, reach out to these folks. I've known all of them for years and stand firm and proud with them in what we did. David Schulman, the Schulman Auction and Realty, they specialize, his company specializes in antique radios and electronics. Ron Brown from Gold River Auctions out in Olathe, Kansas, he specializes in books, ephemeral items, and collectibles. Mia Woods from Glencora Furnishings, Collective Furnishings, couture, fashion, and vintage clothing. I've known Mia and her family for close to 30 years now. It's hard to imagine. Charles Keller, the Value of History, was historical artifacts on Saturday. Also specializes in military antiques and memorabilia and decorative arts. He has been involved with the World War I Museum here in town, an H.G. Wells aficionado, and just a really interesting, fun guy to get to know and have a conversation with. Really knows his stuff really, really well. Tracy Cayley, if you follow our auctions at all, you recognize her name. We use her for all of our jewelry appraisal work, and she was the appraiser Saturday at the appraisal event for KCPT. Brady Drescher, fine art, Native American art, and collectibles. Brady's an interesting fellow. He's from Wichita area originally. He also works out of Indianapolis and out of Denver, Colorado. He has offices and colleagues and affiliates all over the Midwest and is really building a really interesting little kind of empire of appraisers, talking about and being able to talk about and work with many different specialties and opportunities as necessary. Christine Sutton does some antique shows and markets around the area. Really knows her quilts, dolls, and textiles super, super well. She is a wealth of information in those areas and has been dealing with antiques for more longer than she'd want me to say. Rob Lee, doing this a long time, sterling silver, textiles, costume jewelry, and then a lot of these people are generous and a little bit about a lot of different things. Randy Kraler from Heartland Estate Sales. He was there talking about toys and sports memorabilia and things along those routes and that nature. And then there was also, of course, Amy Absher, who works for us, has worked with us for 11 or 12 years now as our manager here. She really helps set these up on the back end. She does a lot of work coordinating events and schedules with the station, the appraisers, and us. And she was appraising and talking about artwork and generalist categories. And then, of course, I was there, and furniture folk art was my thing on Saturday. But, of course, I know a little bit about a lot of different areas, so we were able to talk to a lot of different people. I want to thank Steve and Tracy for joining us. We're talking about the KCPT Fine Art and our Antique and Fine Art Appraisal event we did last Saturday for Kansas City's public television station. And we are so proud to be associated with them. We've supported their network and their mission for decades. Great children's programming, great programming for all folks. Of course, we all watch Antiques Roadshow regularly. My wife loved Downton Abbey. And when our children were younger, we watched Clifford the Big Red Dog and Sesame Street. And when we were watching uh, electric company and stuff when I was a kid on there. So public television's been around for us for a long, long time. We're very happy to be associated with them today. Thanks for watching, Tracy, and thanks for coming out last Saturday and doing the event with us. Your input and ability to be there really made it a great day. And you saw some great pieces, a couple of big diamonds and other interesting jewelry, so that was always fun to hear about. We love seeing those great things when they come to events like that. We have a couple on our calendar over the next 6 months or so. If you have an organization that would be interested in doing an appraisal event, please reach out to us. We're always doing those for different organizations and groups, and we're happy to talk to you about what you have and how we can help you out. If you have any questions about joining us personally, you can always send us a message here through Facebook, direct message. Drop us a note here. If you're on YouTube, drop a message there. You can always drop us an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com. Or you can give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. Ask us any questions about what you have. We can usually get you an answer about what your items are in just a little bit of time and talk to you about what you might consider doing with them going forward. It's Easter Friday, so hopefully you'll have a great weekend planned where you're at. Hopefully you can spend some time with your family and loved ones. And hopefully it's a nice spring weekend when we're all done with winter. That would be a great thing for all of us across the country, as we've dealt with one of the longest, harshest winters I can remember in years from many of our friends and family across the country. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap this up and sign off. Again, if you have any questions, there's a plethora of ways to get a hold of us through Facebook, our website, email, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm in all those places regularly. So go ahead and reach out to us anytime you can, need to, want to, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.